Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sarashi Srimad Dvanga Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Jighav Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Mathura Dham ki jai. Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskricham Naram Chairam Namotaram Nebim Saraswatim Jasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nasta Parayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. We are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 7th chapter, text number 50. So Yam Te Bihitu Vihitas Tvam Bhagavatam Vishva Vabanaha Samashena Harer Nanyad Anyas Madi Sad Ashak Cha Yat Yam Soyam Se Bhagavasata Bhagavan Isha Bhavataha Samshena Harer Nanyad Anyamad Sarashach Chat Yat Sat, responsibly, that Ayam, the same, Te, unto you, Abhihitaha, explained by me, Tata, my dear son, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Vishvabhavanaha, the creator of the manifested worlds, Samasena, in brief, Harihe, without Hari, the Lord, Na, never, Anyat, anything else. Anyasmat, being the cause of. Sat, manifested or phenomenal. Asat, nominal. Cha, and. Yat, whatever there may be. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. My dear son, I have now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is creator of the manifested worlds. Without him, Hari, the Lord, there is no other cause of the phenomenal and nominal existences. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since we generally have the experience of the temporary material world and conditioned souls trying to lord it over the material worlds, Brahmaji explained to Narada Deva that this temporary world is the work of the external potency of the Lord, and that the conditioned souls struggling here for existence are the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. There is no cause for all these phenomenal activities for him, Hari, the Supreme Lord, who is the primeval cause of all causes. This does not mean, however, that the Lord himself is distributed impersonally. He is aloof from all these interactions of the external and marginal potencies. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.4, it is confirmed, I'll read that later, Bhagavad Gita 9.4, it is confirmed that by his potencies alone, he is present everywhere and anywhere. Everything that is manifested rests on his potency only. But he, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always aloof from everything. The potency and the potent are simultaneously one and different from one another. One should not deprecate the Supreme Lord for the creation of this miserable world, just as one should not blame the king for creating a prison house in the government. The prison house is a necessary institution of the governmental establishment for those who are disobedient to the laws of the government. Similarly, this material world, full of miseries, is a temporary creation of the Lord for those who have forgotten Him and are trying to lord it over the false manifestation. He, however, is always anxious to get the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. And for this, He has given so many chances to the conditioned souls via the authoritative scriptures, His representatives, and personal incarnations also. Since He has no direct attachment to this material world, He is not to be blamed for its creation. Verse again. My dear son, I have now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the creator of the manifested worlds. Without Him, Hari, the Lord, there are no other causes of the phenomenal and noumenal existences. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langayate girim yatkari patarham bande ti Shri Guru Dinatarane. It's interesting that in this particular verse, at the end of describing the various incarnations, that Brahma addresses Narada as my dear son. The word tata, my dear son, is the Sanskrit word for my dear son. So this indicates that something a little unusual, we might call it mystical or magical or ephemeral or something magical seems to happen when a disciple and guru relationship takes place. It indicates here that it's more than just a teacher-student kind of relationship. There's a type of affectionate sort of development that takes place. It's kind of like Vatsalya Rasa. That's a parental kind of type of affection. So the word is used as tata, my dear son. My dear son, I have now explained in brief. So Brahma is the head of the disciple succession that starts from Brahma, but he's indicating that Narada is his son. He's not just a student of Vedic knowledge. And Prabhupada indicates here that Krishna is everywhere, and this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter. I'm going to read a little bit of this verse from the 9th chapter. Maya tatam idam, this is 9.4, 9th chapter, 4th verse. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavastita. In the translation it reads, by me, in my unmanifested form, the entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And then in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not perceivable through the gross material senses. It is said, Atak Sri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grayam indriyai sevanmukhi jivado swayameva spurachita, from the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Chaitamrita. And the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu also declares this. Lord Shri Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, etc. cannot be understood by material senses. Only to one who is engaged in pure devotional service under proper guidance is he revealed. In the Brahma Samhita 5.38, it is stated, Pramanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadaiva Hridayeshu Valokayanti. One who can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda always within himself and outside himself is one. Always within himself and outside himself, if one has developed the transcendental loving attitude towards him. Thus, for people in general, he is not visible. Here it is said that although he is pervading, everywhere present, he is not conceivable by the material senses. This is indicated. So when Prabhupada in his translation uses the word noumenal, He's referring to that which is invisible or not perceivable by the senses, and phenomenal meaning everything that is perceivable by the senses, or the material world. Although he is all-pervading, everywhere present, he is not conceivable by the material senses. This is indicated here by the word avyakta murtina. But actually, although we cannot see him, everything is resting in him. As we have discussed as ever in the 7th chapter, the entire material cosmic manifestation is only a combination of his two different energies, the superior spiritual energy and the inferior material energy. Just as the sunshine is spread all over the universe, the energy of the Lord is spread all over the creation, and everything is resting in that energy. One should not conclude that because he is spread all over, he has lost his personal existence. To refute such an argument, the Lord says, quote, open quote, I am everywhere and everything is in me, but still I am aloof, close quote. For example, a government which is but the manifestation of the king's energy, the different governmental departments are nothing but the energies of the king, and each department is resting on the king's power. But still, one cannot expect the king to be present in every department personally. This is a crude example. Similarly, all the manifestations that we see and everything that exists, both in this material world and in the spiritual world, are resting on the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The creation takes place by the diffusion of his different energies, and, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Vistavyam idam kritsnam, he is everywhere present by his personal representation, the diffusion of his different energies. So the basis of the Krishna consciousness philosophy is called Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, meaning simultaneously oneness and difference. And in a way, it is very difficult for ordinary people to understand how something can be simultaneously one and different at the same time. And Prabhupada gives some examples of how this is so. One is the sun, the sun planet or entity, the sun, and the sunshine. The sunshine is so powerful that it can change the color of our skin. It can cause us very difficult and uncomfortable situations, and it grows all the flora of the world. And at the same time, it has its own existence. It's separate, but one and the same. Scientists have concluded, that, maybe not exactly correctly, but that the sun is a series of hydrogen explosions, and they've calculated what the temperature is. It's very, very, very high. And very distant, also 93 million miles away, according to their calculations. But at the same time, it has a very strong presence in the material world. So that's an example of one and difference. And another example is the states in the United States. I come from there. I have a lot to answer for, being a citizen of that country. But in that country, the different states like Oregon and California and Texas and Wyoming have their own laws, their own legislatures. At the same time, they're all American citizens. They have the same kind of passport. And if there's anything unusual happening, like a war, for example, they take shelter in the fact that they're American citizens. So they're simultaneously Americans and Californians or Oregonians or Wyomingians or Texans or Pennsylvanians or whatever. So that's another example of one and difference. And another example is that of a policeman who has a certain demeanor. He wears a gun, he wears a badge, he wears a certain uniform when he's at work, but when he comes home, he takes off his pistol and puts on his civilian clothes, and he's just called by his first name by his wife or by his children instead of Constable so-and-so or Officer so-and-so. So that's another example of oneness and difference. It exists everywhere, not only the sun, not only in human beings, not only in everything that we see, not only in the states and the federal government, but everything is simultaneously one and difference. And that is the basis of the Krishna conscious philosophy. And the word achintya is used here, achintya bheda bheda tattva, to mean that it's inconceivable. We can't actually conceive of the concept of oneness and difference, how something can be one and not one at the same time. So it's known as achintya, or inconceivable. I want to read a little bit about how Krishna, because he's mentioned as creating everything numinal and phenomenal, that he is kind of impartial, and he creates the material world for those who are disobedient, just like a government, as we're reading in the purport, creates a prison house for those who are disobedient to government laws. So Krishna is kind of neutral. He's not there personally present. He's not creating the material world for people to be disobedient. People have, according to Vedic philosophy, they have free will. And they are the cause of criminality. It's not that Krishna is the cause of criminality. And sometimes when people go to a court and they're accused of a heinous crime, they say, "Oh, well, the devil made me do it." Things like that. And that's usually not very, very well accepted. And then in 1973, in January, Prabhupada was giving a lecture on the Nectar of Devotion, and he was saying, this is an example of how Krishna he's neutral, but sometimes he's very affectionate towards his devotees, and he breaks this neutrality. So in general, he's neutral, or what we call Swiss neutral, to everything, but on certain occasions he throws that neutrality aside to come to the aid of his devotees. And here's an example that Prabhupada gave. Just like Bhishma Dev was enjoying the chivalry rasas when he decided that, open quote, "This day I must kill Arjuna. Either Krishna will have to break his promise, ... end parenthesis, end quote. Krishna promised that he would not take any weapon in the battle. He should remain neutral. Because both sides, they were relatives. So it is not good to take part partially in one party and neglect other." The English is a little bit strange because this is a lecture. Of course, it was divided. Krishna divided himself. His soldiers one side and Krishna one side. He said, Duryodhana and Arjuna, that, open quote, "I shall remain neutral, but I am dividing my strength in this way. One side I am, and one side my soldiers." Close quote. So Duryodhana thought that, quote, "What shall I do with Krishna? Better take his soldiers." Close quote. So he took the soldiers in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Arjuna said that, quote, "I want you." Close quote. There's a story, some of you may have heard this, that Duryodhana became a little disappointed in Bhishma because he said that he wasn't fighting with full strength. And that if he were fighting with full strength, he would have killed all the Pandavas by that time. So Bhishma told him, he said, "Now I have 5 special weapons, arrows, and I'm going to use these 5 arrows tomorrow to kill all the Pandavas. They're all going to die. That's my rasa." And Duryodhana, being a great politician, became a little doubtful. He said, well, he addressed him as grandfather. Grandfather Bhishma, "Grandfather, I'll keep the arrows here with me, and you come and get them tomorrow morning." Because he was a little doubtful if he kept them, that somehow or other he wouldn't use them. So anyway, Krishna rather, because he's all-knowing, omniscient, he kind of knew the whole story. So he reminded Arjuna that he said, once Duryodhana gave you a promise. He gave you a boon that whatever you wanted, he would do. Whatever you asked for, he would give you. So I want you to go to Duryodhana and get those 5 arrows. So he went to Duryodhana's camp, and they were, according to the story, these Kshatriya fighters were good friends after the sunset, after the battle was over, and that day's fighting was ended. They ate together, they sat together, they were all good friends, and all their animosity had evaporated. So he went to Duryodhana, and Duryodhana said, Arjuna, please sit down and take some food and make yourself comfortable. And what is your purpose in coming here? What do you want? And he said, I don't really need anything. He said, well, go, if you want the kingdom, I'll give it to you, and we won't even have to fight. And he said, well, that's not my reason. I want to get something from you. And he said, well, you promised me that one day that you would give me everything that you had, or you would do anything I said. So I'm going to ask you now. And he said, well, go ahead. He said, I want those 5 arrows. So because Krishna knew what those arrows were, and that Vishnu was going to use them, he told Arjuna the inside story, and Arjuna took the 5 arrows and went away. And then Prabhupada continues in his lecture on Nectar Devotion, just like the same thing happened in general politics. when Gandhi started the movement, non-cooperation movement. So he selected some very big men in India, big lawyers like C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru, etc. So C.R. Das at that time, about 50 years ago, this lecture was given in 1970, so we're in 1973, so we're calculating 50 years before that. He said that, open quote, Gandhiji, you take all my money, but let me practice. Don't ask me to boycott the British court, close quote. But that was on one of the programs. So Gandhi said, open quote, no, I don't want your money, I want you, close quote. And actually, that was very effective. So similarly, Arjuna also decided that I don't want your soldiers, quote, I don't want your, open quote, I don't want your soldiers, I want you, close quote. So there are different rasas. So the fact is, the idea is that you can make your relationship with Krishna with any kinds of rasas, because beyond these 12 rasas, there is no other rasa. There are these 12 rasas complete, 5 primary and 7 secondary, direct and indirect. Therefore, our Goswami's instruction is that you establish your relationship with Krishna. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayat. Somehow or other, you fix up your mind in Krishna. So, just to continue the story, when the next day, when Arjuna was fighting very fiercely, he was firing arrows at Arjuna, and it's custom in Kshatriya warfare that they disable the chariot driver at the same time. So he was shooting arrows into Krishna, and they were drawing blood, actually drawing blood. They were very serious. He was really seriously shooting arrows at him. And Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that to Arjuna, because of the rasa, they didn't feel painful. They felt like love bites from a lover, that the lover sometimes bites on the body of the beloved. So this is the rasa that Bhishma had with Krishna. And Krishna had picked up a chariot wheel and was spinning it like his chakra and charging against Bhishma. And Bhishma is enjoying this. There's a film that the Bollywood made of Krishna with his hands outspread as if to accept anything that Krishna wanted to do. And then at that moment, according to some, the sun was setting, so it was the end of the day, and the fighting didn't actually attack Arjuna. But Prabhupada saw it as a very important thing, and he had one of his painters paint the picture of Arjuna in his chariot and Krishna with his spinning chariot wheel, attacking Bhishma. And Arjuna at a certain point got off his chariot and tried to stop. It's a very dramatic moment. He tried to stop Krishna from going forward to attack Bhishma, because Bhishma was very beloved to Krishna. Anyway, that's part of this interesting story that Prabhupada tells. So my point is that Krishna is generally neutral, and he keeps his promises, but on occasions, in order to protect his devotees, he sometimes breaks his promise, and this is an instance of breaking his promise. And now I'm going to tell a little story about George Harrison. I know you're all interested in this. It had to do with when he was stabbed in December of 1999. I was in New Zealand, and I got a phone call from a lady named Rachel, who I sort of knew. She was the housekeeper, and she said, I have to tell you something. This is in the afternoon. I think it was a weekday afternoon. And I want to give you the straight story before you get it from distorted media information. George was stabbed last night, but he's okay. He was taken away to the hospital. And what actually happened was an intruder came into his home and stabbed him. And and it was kind of a dramatic moment where he was yelling something. George Harrison, come out, I'm going to kill you, or he was a bit mad, as are a lot of murderers. And the story is that when George was at the top of his stairs, he shouted Hare Krishna real loud to somehow discourage the guy from charging him up the stairs. Anyway, he stabbed him several times. He was sort of a very tough guy. And he injured his wife, not seriously, but injured her. And at some point, when he was stabbing George, there was a a sort of a floor lamp on the ground, about 4 or 5 times the size of this thing, and that was the thing that held up the lamp, and she. The wife of George hit this intruder over the head with that, and at first he just didn't feel anything because he was so psyched up and had so much adrenaline flowing for his murderous act. But after a while, it finally dawned on him that he was out. He was unconscious. So then they were all taken to George and his wife were taken to the hospital, and he survived the incident. So that's what actually happened. And about 2 years later, he passed away, but not from those particular wounds. Anyway, that's just a little incident of what happened at Prior Park. And in case you don't know, on Monday the 6th, this coming Monday, there's at the Krishna Village in the Yoga Hall, there's going to be a showing of the Hare Krishna movie, the documentary, 90-minute documentary, starting at 1:30. Technology cooperating, and ending at 3 o'clock, and from 3 to 3:45 I will be giving I'll be there myself, giving a little talk, and a question and answer period will take place there. That's this Monday at 1:30 and 3 to 4. So you're all welcome to come if you want to come and see the film again, or hear some more. I think we'll stop. I'll just read this verse again, and then we can have some comments or questions. My dear son, I have now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is creator of the manifested worlds. Without him, Hari, the Lord, there are no other causes of the phenomenal and noumenal existences. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions on anything that's been read or said? Sorry? Go ahead.
Just one thing. You mentioned that after in the battle of Kurukshetra that after the warriors, when the sun went down, that they were all friends. Were they friends, or were they just respectful? Did they actually like each other, do you think? Or?
Well, it's kind of like in a sport, like soccer or something like that. They're competitors and they're trying to beat the other team. But when they're not playing the thing, they have a kind of friendly relationship with the other side. I mean, it's sort of like a friendship, but fighting with kshatriyas, they're sort of like warriors, just like. These football players, they're trying to win, but at the same time they don't have hatred towards the other team. So it's a sort of friendship because they're playing a similar game. They're fighting, or they're kicking the ball or whatever, but they're doing a similar thing. So they respect their enemies. And you may call it respect, but it can sometimes become a friendly. With kshatriyas, it's more like a friendly relationship. They sit together, they eat together, they talk together, they act in friendship, even though it's more of a respectful kind of thing. Just like a very accomplished players of say football. They respect another football player, even if he's on another team, but he's just a very excellent player. So they respect that, and they develop a friendly relationship, if possible, with such a person. So this kind of friendliness that exists between kshatriyas is part of the kshatriya game or spirit. Prabhupada calls it the kshatriya spirit. I mean, this can be a long discussion, but that's what they do. Yes, anything else? Okay, we'll stop. Hare Krishna.
As far as the Mukunda Maharaj,